Okay, we're going to call the work session to order here for May the 22nd, 2018. And as usual, we start out with citizen comments. And tonight we do have one person that wanted to speak on an item that was not on the agenda, he tells me. Mr. Dunn wanted to mention state of the city and annexation priorities. So we'll give you a couple of minutes. So you like that spot better? You're welcome there or wherever you want to be.
I like to be up here where everybody can see me.
You look important up there.
I'm Martin Dunn, and I have lived at 147 Lancaster Drive in Harpeth Meadows for the last 45 years. My wife and I moved from Memphis and decided to buy in Franklin because it had a reputation for good living conditions and good schools. The population of Franklin was around 6,000 when we moved here. Franklin's always emphasized growing the population, and it's worked. Population now has multiplied tenfold. The city spent much of our property tax money to prepare for future residents. Now we need to direct some of our resources to the specific needs of current residents, like raising homes above the flood level.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dunn. That's one of the items on the agenda.
That's all I'm going to say about it.
Okay, good. Okay.
I was pleased to hear at the work session on May the 1st about annexation and growth priorities. One of our aldermen state that we should not forget about the needs of current residents. I hope you will give current citizens' needs a high priority in your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and as our usual practice is we do have speaker cards that are located at the post. I would ask that if you plan on speaking on an item that we're discussing, that you fill that out now, because I generally don't take those after a certain time during the meeting, just because so we can plan and make sure we can accommodate everybody. So next we're going to have a presentation of the Franklin Locals Program by the Downtown Franklin Association. So we have everybody with these shirts on and only one person's going to present.
Yes, but they're going to all be recognized. Thank you very much. My name is Joni Cole, and my husband and I, Michael Cole, we own Grays on Main and our new restaurant, OB Joyful. I have served on the Downtown Franklin Association Executive Board for about the last 4 to 5 years, and part of my responsibilities is being in charge of economic vitality. That is one of the 4 pillars that you have to be an accredited Main Street program, which we are, and we're very proud of. With that, what I am charged with is to make sure that our streets of historic downtown Franklin is economically vital. So Christy Williams right here had a vision years ago of bringing a concierge to the streets per se. We wanted to have people, volunteers, walking the streets, answering questions. So I began to form a committee, and through this, back in October was when we started this committee, we have come up with Franklin Locals. That is the name of our program. This is our logo, and it's called I'm a Franklin Local Volunteer. And you can see that there's 7 of us here tonight with the Franklin Local T-shirt on. This is actually one of the shirts that we will be wearing as we are walking up and down the streets. Next slide, please. Our mission statement is very simply, volunteer greeters provide an amazing welcome with authentic Franklin hospitality to all who visit. Our brand promise is helping visitors experience Franklin like a local. I am a local. I moved here in the 70s, graduated from Franklin High School in 1981. So we wanted to raise the bar. We wanted to raise our level of hospitality to that next level on the streets of downtown Franklin. So think about this as a concierge program. You're here, you're brand new, you're walking down the streets and you have no idea where anything is, you don't know where restaurants are, you just have basic questions. We're going to be walking up and down the streets with these T-shirts on and other type of T-shirts that have our logo and answering these questions. We're going to be pointing people back to the visitor center. We're going to be sharing about the tours that we have. We're going to be talking about the restaurants that are on the streets. It's a very brief answer. We're not holding these folks hostage. It's a very brief answer, and then they go on their way. Okay? Back in October, I formed a committee because we wanted to make sure that we touched all the bases. And I just want to really quickly go over who is on my committee. It's a very impressive list. These folks have given tirelessly their time, effort, and money and resources for us to come to get together today with this program. The CVB, and they've just walked in, Ellie and Megan. They helped me very much. City Hall was represented by Melissa Ryerson and Monique McCullough, and we thank you very much. The City Hall has been very, very instrumental in this and very vocal as we've gone through. Twine Graphics, John Bond and Brandon Hagan, they gave us their time for these T-shirts and helped us with this logo. We want to thank them. My Economic Vitality Group is a group of people that we meet once a month, and we've been doing this for years, and we talk about different things like the Mars Pet Care program that we brought, Better Cities for Pets. This is what we do. We bring programs to downtown Franklin. And that's Nell Ann Crow. She's here. She's with Morning Point. Jason Collins is here with Juice Bar. Bob Stewart and Tom Golden, they're both volunteers. Jennifer Money, she's with Carriage House. So you can see we have a broad group. We also have Williamson Inc. has been very involved, Brian Dolschel, so we're touching that base as well. A lot of advertising agencies and promotion agencies, Steve Chandler, Susan Andrews, Matt Brown, Deb Faulkner with the police department. Are you here tonight, Deb?
She's up there.
Oh, there you are. Thank you so much. She was in some of our initial meetings because we wanted to make sure that we did this the correct way and that we were legal and fair. And then Samantha Pyle with Green Apple Strategy, L.K. Browning with Columbia State Community College. So I think we touched all of our bases. We had a lot of input. A couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. How do we train these folks? What happens at that point? So our training is two-part. The first part of our training is with the ambassador program that Megan Weisinger and the CVB, they developed that some time ago. And that's once a month, the second Tuesday of every month. And it's a 4-hour program. And it's basically a tour of downtown and the county at large. So you're getting an overview, okay? The second part of this is 4 hours in classroom at the old jail. And Nell Ann and her training group, her teaching committee, subcommittee, we have a notebook. And in this notebook, we will have guest speakers that will train on the history of downtown Franklin, the restaurants, the most 100 questions that people can ask about downtown Franklin, our festivals, other topics that we go a little bit more into. At the end of that 4-hour training, they sign a release and waiver so that the city and Downtown Franklin Association, we are not held liable if someone falls off the street, the sidewalk, when we're standing there talking to them. So that's in there as well. That will be once a month. The folks that have already gone through the ambassador program, there's well over 100. They've pretty much, quite a few of them have signed up already. So this will definitely be a volunteer basis. We want it to be volunteers, and that's the reason why it says it here. Where is this going to happen? This is going to happen on Main Street from the square to 5 Points. And we're going to basically just focus on that area for right now and see how many. We've done already test studies. We've been out there. We've been doing this. So we've done a lot of research. When is this going to happen? We decided that we really wanted it to be, we wanted to cover all of our bases. So we are not going to start training anyone until my committee, all those folks, we will do a beta launch, and that's going to be June the 21st. So we will go out there first. We will sit through this training. We will walk the streets and be concierge on the streets, gather a lot more information, and then at that point we'll make changes where we need to make changes, and then we will hopefully launch the program around the 1st of July, and we'll have our first real volunteer class go through our training. That's basically it in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions?
Sounds great.
We'll be looking for you on the street.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. You're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
I think this is something that we've needed for a long time, and for the future tourists, I thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was not, I was not alone. It was everyone involved. But thank you so much for saying that. I think it's going to be fun on top of everything else.
Okay, you should have received an email that said we were going to pull items 2 and 3, and they'll be brought back at an undetermined date in the future. Item 4 is an event permit for Race to Cure Sarcoma in the Berry Farms area. Any questions? Number 5 is an event permit for Harpeth River Bike Ride, June the 2nd. No questions. Item 6 is a liquor license renewal for Case Select Wines and Liquors. No questions. Item 7 is consideration certificate of compliance renewal for wine and grocery stores for SFM doing business as Sprouts Farmers Market on Murfreesboro Road. No question there. Then we will look at number 8 and 9. One is body cameras, another were dash cameras, a contract. Were there any questions on either one of those?
Let me just touch on that real quick.
Sure,
just
please.
For the benefit of folks here and maybe watching. Good evening. This is an important move forward in terms of implementing body cameras, something we've been working on for several years now. Over the last, about a year ago, the state enacted some laws that we were very central in terms of developing that help protect the privacy of citizens while facilitating the implementation of body cameras by local police departments. Since that time, we've evaluated a number of different technologies or technology options around both body cameras, but also how they link with the existing dash cameras that we have in police cars. We've had cameras in police cars for many, many years, but we wanted the systems to work well together, also provide for the storage and management of those files long-term. Our department has developed policies around how those are used and how documents are retained and shared when requested by the public or by media sources. And so all those pieces have come together, and now we're moving forward to implement and purchase cameras for our police department. And that's what these two represent. We were able to acquire the preferred technology, which is a company called Axon, through an existing purchasing cooperative purchasing arrangement. So we're able to get the benefit of that costing, and this fits within our budgeted amounts for this year and have been anticipated and built into the FY19 budget and will be accommodated beyond that. So we're glad to move forward with it. Our department has really been leaders in the state in developing both policies and working with the legislature and adopting laws that appropriately protect privacy, and we're glad to be moving forward tonight with these purchases.
Any questions? Alderman Berger?
Just have a question on the terms again.
Mm-hmm.
What is the warranty on these things?
Well, this is a 5-year arrangement. Chief may be able to cover it, but it basically this is a 5-year arrangement that provides for both the equipment, the software, and the file maintenance.
Okay.
So it really provides the full service throughout the 5-year period
For all of that?
for everything.
Technology, everything?
Technology and the hardware and the software and the management of the files.
So are we paying anything else besides, under that warranty, if we have technology issues, software issues, that's all covered?
It's designed to cover the whole package.
Okay. Just want to know. Okay, thanks.
Alderman
I'm
Bransford?
good.
Just for our public, have we tested this, pilot these cameras?
We have.
Just
We
make
put
sure
in
our
the
public-
field several different technologies, tried them out, both in terms of how they functioned, how they literally felt for the officers, and the quality of what was provided. So we field tested the technologies and are very comfortable that this will fit our needs.
Great, thank you.
Ready to move on? We'll go to item number 10, which is a discussion of the United States Army Corps of Engineers Harpeth River Watershed feasibility study and the recommended projects options for the city of Franklin. If you recall, you may remember one project that came out of that was the box culverts under the bridge on Franklin Road and the opportunity to lower the floodplain about a foot. That was financially feasible, and the other one was the opportunity to potentially elevate a number of homes and get them out of the floodplain. And what we'll be discussing tonight is primarily the elevation of the homes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And this is I would characterize it, you may disagree with me, as a different type of project, which we talked about last time on Battle Avenue, where we were talking about destroying, or, yeah, that's
Raise
demolishing two homes for a flood basin area. I think this, I'm going to allocate quite a bit of time to this tonight, because I think there's a lot of discussion. I want to let Paul go ahead and speak, and Eric may want to say some other comments about it also. And Alderman Peterson had sent me a note that she wanted to show a couple of slides as background too at the appropriate time. So,
Mayor, I think you introduced it well. There's been a lot of detailed study, really all coming off of the 2010 flood, and a lot of different aspects were looked at, and the Army Corps engaged in looking at the broader basin, working with Franklin, Nashville, Brentwood, both Williamson County, Davidson County, and exploring options, and just a few came out as being beneficial in terms of a cost-benefit analysis, and that's what we're continuing to follow up on and how those might work in our community. And we want Paul to kind of walk through what those are with you today, and the memo, I think, explains the two projects in Franklin that have been identified as being potentially beneficial. And we want to walk that through with you tonight and talk about what your direction is from a policy standpoint, and then we'll move forward with that in terms of how that might translate into working with the public as well.
So the non-structural home raising project details basically is what I'll cover. Eric and the mayor did a great job introducing it. And essentially this program has to be administered and sponsored by the City of Franklin and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Now, as I understand it, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers or the individual homeowners could manage the actual constructions with assistance from us. It is absolutely a voluntary program. 26 homes were identified as part of this process, and all those houses would have to be elevated above the 100-year flood zone level and would comply with our zoning ordinance requirements. The estimated cost as provided by the Army Corps for all 26 properties is around $2.5 million. The U.S. Army Corps, the federal government, would cover 65% of that actual cost, which also includes temporary relocation cost for the residents when their structure is being raised. The homeowner or city would be responsible for the remaining 35%. Essentially, there's an option of whether the homeowner pays, the city pays, or whether we split the cost of the non-federally funded portion, and that's really what we're seeking your guidance on. The construction cost estimates provided by the Army Corps includes the cost of raising the home, construction of a new foundation. We'll have to disconnect utilities and the ductwork and reconnect that back up. There'll also be some minor landscaping that we have to restore back after construction, and temporary housing for up to 3 months is included in their cost estimating. So to just run through the different options, option number one, the U.S. Army Corps pays 65% of it. The remaining 35% would be paid by the homeowner to the city, and the city would also then pay the non-federal funded portion of it. Option number two, again, the U.S. Army Corps would pay 65% of it, and the city could just step up to the plate and pay the remaining 35% of it for the property owners that agree to participate in this program. And again, it's a 100% voluntary program. Option number three is where the U.S. Army Corps again pays their 65%, and the remaining amount of funding is split between the city and the homeowner. And option four would be to not participate at all, which we don't support that option, but felt like we should at least have it here listed. Again, we're really looking for the board's direction. We have not really started to go out and engage these property owners because we really need to understand the funding component of it and who's responsible for what before we start engaging them. And so we're really looking for your feedback on how to proceed.
So what we've recommended is certainly that the city should participate in the program and make that access to the federal money available. I think where the harder policy question comes in is to whether we want to put city dollars, local dollars into raising private homes. elevating private homes. And that's really where we're looking at your guidance to this point. With flooding projects, we have taken more of a broader sort of basin approach or regional approach, where we looked at detention facilities and those types of initiatives. There have been situations where individual property owners have elevated their homes, but that has been the individual homeowner's choice. We have not had public dollars go into that sort of project to this point. So it's something we have not done in the past, but certainly want to present the option to you tonight in terms of how you want to proceed with this, and glad to answer any questions you have from there.
And I'd like to just point out that there is an exhibit that is attached to this. We're raising homes anywhere from, as proposed by the Army Corps, about 4 foot through 10 feet. In these houses, there's one in the Monticello subdivision, there's 3 in Rebel Meadows. Lancaster is another subdivision that has multiple houses, and then Ewingville is the other subdivision that has multiple housing. So,
Alderman McClendon, Alderman Peterson had asked to show a couple of slides. If you, I know you had your hand up first, I'll recognize you second, if that's okay.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know whether we were going to get to speak before the public, but I want to, let's see, Vicki, I think we'll start with the first slide. I want to bring your attention to a booklet. I happen to have a copy of it here, and let's see. Well, you still can't read that from here. It says, well, you can see the Harpeth. It says the floodplain information for the Harpeth River, Franklin, Tennessee. If you look at the bottom, you see it's prepared for the city of Franklin by the Corps of Engineers, and the date on it is July 1968. I want to call your attention to that date. Actually, in the introduction, it says it was prepared at the request of the mayor and alderman of the town of Franklin at that time. On page 1, it further states that in 1968, the situation was the town of Franklin, Tennessee is located mostly on the west bank of the Harpeth. The principal developments of Franklin are on high ground west of the river, but there are commercial and residential developments on lands, it goes on, it says, that are vulnerable to major floods. The book right here goes on to show Hillsborough Road, that is the 5th Avenue North. It has photos of that area for the flood of 1948 and 1951. Okay, now we're going to be looking at plate number 4. If you look at this, you will see the light blue is the 100-year floodplain. Technically, that means that it has a 1% chance of flood in any given year. The dark blue is the 500-year. Technically, that is 0.2%, or that is a 1 in 500 chance of flooding in any year. At this time, again, whoops, I still want that up if we can get it. Okay. This is the work that the Corps of Engineers has done in 1968. I don't know whether you could tell. I've got some of these marked here. The lower circle there is about Ewingville, and it's on Highway 96 East. Harpeth Meadows there, and I need to make a comment about this. You'll see it says Liberty Pike goes across there. That's for people that have lived here a long time. Old Liberty Pike. It's where you had to go into the tunnel you had to go through the tunnel to get under the railroad track. But actually, Old Liberty Pike now is part of the traffic signal there as Old Liberty Pike, and the other part is Lancaster Drive that goes into Harpeth Meadows there. Please notice, and I'll go ahead and say that about Harpeth Meadows since we're talking about that right now. The very first part of Harpeth Meadows closest to Franklin Road there is in the 500-year floodplain, which really is not, I guess we could say that that's not considered whenever you're talking about building. However, if you look past the part of it and go further west there, you'll see there's a great amount of 100-year floodplain, the light blue there. And that's where many of the homes here in Harpeth Meadows that are in a part of this group are located. And also, the second circle there is Ewingville. That's off of Highway 96 East, and if you notice, all of that area shows to be in the 100-year floodplain. There are also some other pieces, and I was not able to show exactly where Rebel Meadows is, but if you're looking off of, well, let's see, if you go up, yeah, it's right in there. It's right in there. Yeah, right down to the south of that, I guess you would say, is the part of Fifth Avenue North that we have done work on. For I guess we'd just say it's part of the. It did many things, but it was also part of streetscape there. Okay. All right. Now let me say to you, and I could take the third one now. There's a lot more in this book. That just shows a big picture. If you look in here, there are a lot of plates that are very long that show detail on many of those areas. I picked a piece of one of the, like a third of one of them, just to show you on Ewingville Drive, not only because it's the area that I'm most familiar with, but if you'll look right there, you'll see that there are about 10 houses, 5 on one side of the street and 5 on the other side of the street. So even though I don't know exactly when this was made, it states it's like April 1968. But if I could get you to go back to the very first one, that's the cover of the booklet. If you look, I have circled that specific area on the aerial view that is on the cover of this report. If you can see there, it's already gone into kind of the little circle or P or whatever you want to call that. But if you look, the houses there are on that first, just the first part of the street. That's about the 10 houses that are in the, I guess, first section of that, if you want to say it that way. But I do also want to say that after this report was studied and given to the city of Franklin in July 1968, in the years between 1969 and 1975, at least 16 of the 26 houses that are under discussion tonight were permitted to be built in Franklin in locations that are identified to be in the floodplain from this booklet that the Corps of Engineers did for the city of Franklin. They're mainly located in, as was stated by Mr. Suki, in Harpeth Meadows, in Ewingville, and in Rebel Meadows, although there's some others. Now, if we go back to look at the map, the little flood map there, I guess that would be number 2 there. Okay. These areas are obviously in the identified floodplain there. And by no means are these the only houses that the city allowed to be built in the floodplain over this time. And I'm talking about just looking at 1969 to 1975. You can go on our GIS and look to see when a particular piece of property was built from that map. But, as I say, these are by no means the only houses. In fact, all the other, 25 houses on Ewingville were built during this time. But let me go to these specific houses. They have been identified by the Corps of Engineers based on the damage it says they are experiencing, but the damage by amount of money that damage that they have received, or the frequency with which they are flooded. In other words, the Corps of Engineers is saying there's enough money involved here to justify spending money on elevating the houses. And that would be to get the livable floor outside the floodplain. It says, I'm saying here, this last statement here means that for these 26 houses, the current homeowners and/or previous homeowners have experienced the devastation and cost of their houses being flooded. These occurred because of mistakes that were made when the city of Franklin permitted the buildings, even though at that time they had the information on the floodplains as early as July 1968. Now, I mean, you know, who knows? I mean, it's been 50 years ago. Who or why these decisions were made, you know. But we do know who paid the consequences of the mistakes made by the city. The homeowners did. And there is a letter that I left at the desk for everyone that someone who could not be here tonight asked me to present to you, to tell you about her experience with the flooding and some other information. And she would appreciate you if you looked at it. As I say, she could not be here tonight.
I'll pass a copy of that.
Thank you. Okay.
Are you winding up?
Yes, I've got 3 more sentences. Thank you. Okay.
I want to remind you, Alderman Peterson, that you should have given everybody a copy of this.
Of this? Well,
Isn't that one of your pet peeves? I'm just joking with you, but about getting material beforehand.
Okay. All right, but let me say to you, I've talked about the homeowners, you know, have paid for the consequences of the mistake. Having your house flooded is something that you will never forget. It can change your life. And since it was clearly the fault of the city that these houses were permitted to be built, even though they had the information saying that they should not have been allowed to be built in the floodplain, I will be backing option number 2, that the city pay and use the stormwater fund to pay the full 35%. And I'm asking for other support here. Thank you.
Alderman McClendon.
I will start by saying I'm going to join Alderman Peterson in that effort, but for entirely different reasons. I think it is dangerous precedent to go about assessing fault to the city when deciding what to pay for and what not, because any number of things could be theoretically our fault, and someone might like to lay the bill upon the city, which is, after all, a bill upon all of the taxpayers. I don't think that's the best reason to do this. One, I suppose, could make the argument that buying a house in a floodplain is as much the buyer's fault as the city's for permitting it. But again, that's not the reason.
I'd like to respond to that after you finish.
Look, I stated my position to begin with, because we could go round and round about, that is a policy conundrum that you could never solve. The reason that we should use the city's funds for this is because otherwise we would be departing from our policies. With all due respect to staff, it would be a departure from our policies, not an extension or a modification of our policies. And I would say because that the difference between, for example, the thing we approved last month and this is only the mechanism of salvaging homes and value, not the end result. What we did last month was buy 2 homes at market value to save another 3, 4, 5, or 8 or whatever it was with city funds, significant city funds. And whether those homes were or were not in the floodplain or were not known to be in the floodplain when they were built doesn't matter. We did that. It's a good plan. We've also used city funds and anyone who has heartburn about using city funds to secure or promote someone's private property value paid no attention whatsoever when we approved streetscape on Columbia Avenue, because that did nothing for anyone except the private property owners. It did nothing for traffic, it did nothing for flooding, it did nothing except make some people's property more valuable. So we've already jumped the shark on that, okay? In this case, we have the opportunity to leverage 65% funds to do something that we have been in the business of doing, which is basically protecting property values in our community because we deem that to be an appropriate use of public funds. And we did it last month, and we didn't spend 10 minutes doing it, really. So I think it would be a departure from our policy, not an extension or a revolution of it. As I say, that last month we just did it by a different means. This is instead of digging a big hole, we're raising property. We're literally raising floors. So that's a distinction for me that makes no difference whatsoever. I'll be supporting the effort to have the city make the 35% contribution.
Alderman Martin.
I just want to say that I don't know why it was permitted at that particular time, but an alderman at that time told me that he had a brother-in-law that wanted to build a house in Ewingville, and he could not convince him that it was not the squirrels that put the trash and the leaves in the fence. It was the floodwaters. But he wanted to build it anyway, and he did. So, I don't fault the city 100% for that.
I'd like to respond. First of all, I bought one of those houses out there. I had no idea that it was in the floodplain. The places where I came from, just because you lived close to it's a river that sometimes, like a creek, you can walk across. Whenever I grew up, I lived like a block and a half from something that was at least this big. It never flooded. I would have loved to have had someone tell me. Maybe one person did that, but there are people who grew up here. But what I'm wondering is, whenever they had the floods in 48 and 51 and everything, they were probably either kids or maybe not even had been born, but they bought property out there. But what I'm saying to you is that the city did know. They had the information here, and they did issue the building permits.
Alderman Bransford.
A little bit about process here. 4 feet, some houses would require maybe a 4 feet elevation and some 10 feet. So I'm just trying to think of the neighborhood. You may have could potentially have like this house sitting like this and this house is up like this.
Yeah, that is.
And it's a volunteer for the homeowner to volunteer for this program. They can say, no, I want everything to stay as is, or their neighbor may choose to go up 10 feet, and that's going to create a whole different look.
It sounds like it may look different or bad, but if you go to Old Liberty Pike, there's some great examples of where
Okay.
they did it, and it looks actually really good and
okay.
very well done. And so the number's based on being 3 feet above that 100-year floodplain, and it's, again, 100% voluntary.
Okay.
But it can be done and look very, very well. Look
And-
really good.
And I guess at this juncture, I'm inclined to have the city support, if not 100%, 35%, definitely a higher percentage of that. I think I could say 90-10 type of ratio. I do want to give the homeowners some participation in this, but I don't think they have the whole responsibility. So, short of going 100%, I would definitely look at a 90-10. I think, yeah.
You're referring to the
90-10 of the
35%.
Yeah, of the
Of the
35.
35,
Of
right.
the
Yeah, the
35, yes,
35.
yeah.
Yeah.
Alderman Speedy, then I've got Alderman Barnhill after you.
I guess I look at it from the financial impact of, it's too good of a deal to pass up the 65%
Yeah.
federal funding. And I think, obviously, if we do this, that we're going to increase the fair market value of all these homes. We're probably going to increase the property values. We're going to increase the property taxes that we collect as a city. I would think the homeowners are going to benefit from reduced flood insurance costs.
Yeah.
So I would support the city using stormwater dollars, but I guess I'd also like to explore the option that at the point in time that those homes sell, that maybe we have a lien. The value of the $875,000 across the 26 homes is about $33,000.
Yeah.
I would think that the fair market value of those homes would go up way more than $33,000. At that point in time, we recoup our costs, and we've made an investment in the community.
Alderman Barnhill.
Well, are we prepared to accommodate those that have already done this?
That's a good point, too.
Those weren't eligible for the match from the Army Corps. Those are outside of this program. So this is all predicated on what meets the threshold for the Army Corps, because that's where you get the 65%.
So we've got $2.5 million estimated cost.
Yes.
To raise 26 homes, $100,000 apiece.
Mhm.
All of them the same.
No.
It depends on the home.
Depends
Depends
It's
on the
going to
home.
be a spectrum. Yeah.
So the bigger the footprint, the taller it is, the bigger the more the cost. Okay. I would not agree with Alderman Peterson's assessment of the city allowing, the cities in 1968, 50 years ago, was not the city that it is now with the rules and the regulations and the knowledge that we have and the amount of information that we have from the Corps of Engineers and all of that. So to blanketly say that it's the city's fault and the city shouldn't have allowed this and the city shouldn't have allowed that, well, there were a lot of things that possibly the city may have not should have allowed in 1968 or 1958 or 1948.
Amen.
I mean, I don't think we know that. And I think it's unfair to say that. Now, if we're looking at leveraging the 65% and the 35%, I can probably work within those parameters. I think Pearl has made maybe a suggestion of 90-10 on the 35, and then the homeowners have some buy-in to this, but they've got some buy-in now, because if they do what we're looking at, their flood insurance is probably going down to begin with, so you're automatically going to have some savings on this. So if you take $35,000 and you take 10% of that, the homeowner would have $3,500 in the average of what you just got through presenting as far as the cost themselves. The federal government does 65. We would do the balance of that. And, okay, go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off. I can talk a little bit about flood
If we're doing,
Yeah.
I could live with that. But as far as 100%, I don't think it was the city's fault 50 years ago. And for some of you, some of you know, I had a relative that lived on Lancaster Drive for 20 plus years, and there was flooding then. It got real close to his house. It didn't get in his house, but there's been flooding there for quite some time, and suddenly we're doing this. It's interesting that you've got 26 in Rebel Meadows, and I would have thought we would have. Did we not?
There's 26 total.
No, I didn't
Just
say
a
that.
couple in Rebel
Now,
Meadows.
listen carefully. There's 26 total.
Yeah.
Some of them are in Rebel Meadows. I would have thought we would have eliminated some of Rebel Meadows whenever we did the bypass through there.
And we,
That did happen.
yeah,
That
we
did
did.
happen.
We expedited some acquisition for
Right.
Mac Hatcher so that we didn't go and rebuild or we worked with
But we still
with
there's
state to
still
expedite
some
that.
in Rebel Meadows.
Still a couple that,
Monticello.
yeah,
That's-
3 that
No.
meet that threshold.
One.
Thompson Alley. No.
So let me address
Go ahead.
the insurance thing a little bit, and I can't give you hard and fast rules, but as I understand it, it won't eliminate the need for
right.
flood insurance,
That's
but it will decrease the amount because there's less risk exposure because you've elevated the home and the most valuable components of the home out of the flood plain. So you're probably still going to have to pay some, but it should be significantly reduced. So there is an annual benefit from the property owners to do this. So I don't know that we could tell them exactly, but there will be, I think, a pretty decent benefit in terms of the reduction of flood insurance costs.
Okay, I've got Alderman Blanton, then Alderman McClendon.
I feel like we're taking a straw poll, so I feel like I need to obviously state my stance. I think, Miss Ann, bless your heart for keeping paperwork like you do. You have your own little archives over there in your neighborhood. I think it's interesting that these drawings are from the Corps of Army Engineers from back then, or at least that's what you cited.
Yes.
For them to step up to the plate, identify the problem, and then take the responsibility of 65%, it validates the need for this to happen. I've gotten some emails, I'm sure everybody else here has too, just about the demographic of some of the people that live in Lancaster and other areas. While we are known to be a very wealthy community, it does not always mean and is not applicable across the board. So this could be a burden on some people to be able to stay in a situation, a home they've lived in, and I'm looking at you because you're one of the people that cited 40 years. I mean, that's a long time. So I feel like we need to probably take some responsibility. I'm fine with all, but I'd easily support a 90-10 if that's what the consensus is. But, I mean, I think it's an opportunity.
Go ahead, Alderman Flanagan.
As I said, and with all due respect to Alderman Bransford and Speedy, we didn't ask the people last month to chip in. We didn't suggest putting a lien on those homes, which will undoubtedly be improved in value immediately. We didn't ask them to chip 10% towards the cost of the big hole we're going to dig. So those are suggestions that would be a dramatic departure from the policy that we have followed without writing down. We have bought outright multiple properties that flooded at market value. Now, in many cases, we knocked them down. Sometimes we bought them and knocked them down because we were going to eventually buy them and knock them down for a road. Sometimes we bought them and knocked them down just because there was no way to salvage them. Last month, we agreed to buy 2, knock them down, dig a big hole to protect another however many it was, 5, 6, 8? 5. But we didn't ask those people to chip in. We didn't take a haircut. We didn't ask them to take a haircut off, or get in the deal with us at 10% or 15% or 20%. And we didn't ask to recover the money when and if they sold the home. We just did it. That is why I said what I said to begin with, which is that is what we have been doing. Now, someone might say, well, you should never do that. You should never bail out a property owner. You should never use public money to improve private property, period. Okay, that's an easy rule to articulate and not a particularly useful one when you're trying to make, a whole community better. But you could make the argument. But we've already sailed long past that. Long past it. Almost every project we do, we spend money above and beyond what it would take to just do the project, and we do that, and the direct beneficiaries are the adjacent property owners. The 65% that we can leverage is a great reason to do it. I don't know that we could afford to do it if it weren't for that. So, if we were sitting here with no federal funds, I would say it sounds like it's beyond our reach. But with the federal funds, what we agree to do, what's the big hole over there going to cost us?
we haven't. We've talked about it. The committee approved it, but the board has not yet. We're
All right,
still
so
working
we're gonna,
through that.
okay, so for.
But that was a total project of about $2 million was the best engineering option
All right,
that
so
we
next
could come up
month
with.
or whenever that comes forward, we're going to have an identical opportunity that is different only in its engineering design.
It's the raise versus
It's dig a hole versus lift the home up out of the ditch or that's the only
Out of the
difference.
floodplain.
Out of the floodplain. But the result is the same. We are proposing to spend public money to save property from flooding. Well, either we do neither or we do both, and we do them both the same. That's the only fair thing to do. And it has nothing to do with whose fault it is that the house got built in the first place, which may be true. Again, I say that's a dangerous precedent to start allocating public money. The idea that it was somehow our fault, even if it was, it's not a good idea to use it as a lever to appropriate money. But we should do both of these projects or neither. And if we do them both, and I advocate that we should do them both on the same terms, which is we just do it. And we don't ask for people to participate financially or repay us when and if they make money back.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to Mr. Manston, who wanted to make a public comment.
My penmanship is not real good, but it's MARN
Excuse me, Mr. Marsden.
Yeah, my cousin.
Yours is about as good as mine. So I'm gonna give you 2 minutes, max.
Okay, most of the ground that I have to talk about has been plowed already, but I'm plowing it as a homeowner, purchased in '68, interestingly enough. I got you beat by 5 years. In August of '17, you got a communication from the Corps of Engineers that stated there would be 10 by 18 culverts and raising and/or purchase and removal of residential structures. I understand where the culverts have gone. I understand that we're talking about elevating the structures. Where has the purchase and removal of those three options gone? And that question goes to the Corps, because the August 28, 17 communication is the last one I got until the communication that I got that brought me to this meeting. At that time we had the option to do nothing, have the purchased and removed, or have the house elevated, and it was up to us to decide. The question is still, where did that go? Now, as a homeowner on Unionville Drive, I'm on a fixed income. That fixed means same as broke. Out of the residents on Unionville Drive, 6 of the 9 houses in the list are occupied by a single lady. How many of us can come up with that 35%? Now, when the option of buying my property was in the mix, then I had that option. I could unload the property and move away. In fact, talking to one of the neighbors who is semi-retired but a single lady living in the house, she would take that option because she doesn't want to live in a house that's that much higher. And I'm not crazy about 12 more steps to get into my house at age 70. My wife's going to do the math here. At age 77, when I'm now taking 2 steps to get in the house, I would then have to take 12 or 14. So to then ask me to pay the 10% for the privilege of walking up 12 more steps to get in my house, I will have to make that decision when the time comes. I think most of the rest of the things that I had here have been discussed, and I appreciate the point of view of the alderman, but I just wanted to give a point of view of an actual live person who currently lives and has lived for 50 years on Unionville Drive.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
I think we can explain the one piece, the purchase demolition option. Paul, do you want to just talk through that?
The purchasing is an option. The Corps' percentage would not change. That's 65% on the original raising of the structure. So then the city would have to pick up whatever the fair market value is.
So you only get the value of the raising. You'd have to make up the rest of the difference of the value of the home and of the demolition.
You're kidding.
The Corps did not have that.
You get the same money. It just doesn't go as far.
We still get the 2.5 or the 65% of 2.5 million. We would have to come up with the remainder.
So
The whole value of every home.
So how many houses can we buy for $2 million, Franklin?
No,
You wouldn't have.
you wouldn't do it that
you
way.
would
You would
do it
have
that
a
way.
much larger responsibility if you
I want to
wanted
say our
purchase it.
numbers were coming out to be 8 or 9 million, and we didn't even pursue.
We don't have that much money in the stormwater fund.
So if for my purposes, and please don't anyone think that I'm valuing someone's house at $100,000. $100,000, and we wanted to buy, the Corps would furnish $65,000.
They would furnish the $65,000 of the cost of elevating that home.
What is the cost? of raising?
But I used $100,000 based upon the fact that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That-
I thought you were talking about the value
No,
of the home.
no.
So
I
if
used
the
the
value of the home's $300,000,
It's still.
you're going to get $65,000 towards it.
And then the city kicks in the other $235,000.
Exactly.
If you want to tear it all down.
If you want to buy it.
If you want to raise,
Why did his letter state you have 3 options?
Well, at the time, the Army Corps.
We're not recommending sponsoring that option because it's not financially viable. We don't have that kind of money.
So in 1968, a purchase would have been a different animal amount.
Well, yeah.
Okay, other questions or comments? What is the next step?
Well, we need you to give us direction. I believe we could prepare some kind of resolution, approving that we go down a certain path in terms of the implementation of. First of all, you have to tell us if you want us to enroll in the program.
Yes.
And then, so you tell us to do that, and then you tell us what allocation of city dollars.
Option 2.
That you want to make. So.
You're a little overbearing, Alderman.
I understand what you're saying.
Quite.
But we need
These are my people.
So we'll bring it to you as a vote, and you can tell us that.
Bring back the 2 options. I'm thinking.
Should we explore in some way the 26 homeowners before we go down the path to?
Absolutely.
Or at least get some.
How about this? All of you that want to chip in, raise your hand.
Well, it's a voluntary program.
Say that.
Right. I don't know what else we need to know. It's voluntary from the get-go.
Sure.
But you're not asking for.
So are you willing to do it for 1?
No.
Are you willing to do it for 26? I mean, to me, that's the question.
No.
We can survey people, but I'm not sure that really
And the other
advances
question
it,
is,
to tell you the
Well, you
truth,
need to know
because
where
it's a
people are
math.
coming from.
Yeah, well,
Someone may choose
I mean,
not to
how
do
do we know?
anything, Eric. Is that-
right? You'll have some people that may just not want to change, not want to do it.
So if you had 10 that didn't want to do it, would we still have the program for the other 16?
Even if you had 1.
That's the question. Do you want us to try to get an assessment of that?
Do-
They're going to want to know how you want to participate
Well,
first.
what's the deadline to let the Corps know? Do we have a deadline?
They're wanting an answer to proceed and finalize the environmental. I don't know that there's a hard deadline, but they're trying to get it
So
moving forward.
if we look at the 26 homeowners and 5 of them say, yes, we want to do the program, and everybody else says no, do we get into the program if we
Yes,
want?
we can still.
You can
What
do
if-
it.
Even if 1 says?
Sure.
Okay.
Did we identify?
I don't see a problem in getting into the program. My problem comes with how we handle this, because I have a tendency to agree with what Clyde had said tonight. I didn't speak because basically Clyde said everything I was thinking and how I feel about this. But, 50 years ago, honestly, you can look at this many ways. I've been in 2 floods in my life. I had 6 feet of water and stood in my house, watched my cars float down the road. So you're talking to somebody who's been in 2 floods, and I lived in a floodplain. This is a tough question for me because I've had a lot of experience with this.
Well, maybe
but-
I'm sorry, I thought you were
But,
done.
no, this is not an easy question for me at all.
Can,
Because I don't like the fact that, you go back and make reparations for past governments that none of us sitting here today were a part of. And, one of the things in our culture today, people want reparations for all sorts of things that happened in the past. And I don't go there. I just don't think that's the right place to go. But if it's the will of this board to participate in the program and to help in some way, then, I may vote to do that in some way if this board feels that this is the right direction. I've listened to everybody from Dana to Clyde, different points of view here, but somewhere it's got to be a happy medium, some way to work with this. Also, where does this stop? 26 homes. Are there any other homes?
Yeah, we'd bring a
My question is there any other homes in this entire city that are in a floodplain?
Oh, many.
All right.
Many have been flooded, but the
Okay.
Corps of Engineers
Yeah.
determined that
These
these
are
were
the most
ones
critical.
That's right.
Yeah. So,
well, I'm going to
that's
interrupt
fine.
you, and the
I'm
reason I'm going to
done.
interrupt you is because I think
I'm
there
done.
is enough indication from the discussion that staff will create some type of resolution, bring it back to us for us to look at another work session, and then get it on a voting session. So if that's okay, we've got quite a bit to still cover, and
Only one other question. Does the covers under the 96, do they give any relief? I know they do up, but do they give any relief down?
They give not downstream of it, but upstream is the only relief that it provides.
So that's the only place that those houses are removed from the floodplain.
Yeah, the
and we-
Ewingville area would receive some benefit from that.
Okay.
But let me
improvement.
say to you, yeah, we were talking about
This is
that.
beyond that.
Is this, given that the Franklin Road gets done?
Yes.
Okay, that is. So, and I don't remember what the houses were. There are a certain number that would be no longer in the floodplain if we do the Franklin Road improvement there. But I don't know what those are, and I can't go back.
Yeah, I
on-
remember citing a
We can
number. Do you
bring
know
that.
it off?
No,
I
I
know.
know it's 30 houses, but I can
30
bring that
something,
exhibit.
yeah.
Please do.
As an
because you
attachment.
know I
Well,
told
we'll
you
do that
I-
on a, whenever we bring the resolution, we'll have some more refinement of
Thank
it,
you.
if that's okay. We'll move on to item number 11, is contract number 2018-79, Harpeth River Paraphyton Sampling with Civil and Environmental Consultants Incorporated for paraphyton algae sampling in the Harpeth River in support of the EPA's TMDL development. Is there any question about that?
We're in the midst of the total maximum daily load study, working closely with Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation and the US EPA. This is additional, basically, data or collection that we can do to help that study.
Okay, we'll move on to item 12, which is a strategic action plan. Good job, Michelle. Consideration of strategic action plan proposal for creating affordable and workforce housing options in the city of Franklin.
Vernon's going to come up and talk a little bit about this. This is something we'd like to spend a little bit of money on in terms of helping create some focus and some strategic focus specifically on some things we can do around affordable and workforce housing within the community. So I'll let Vernon talk a little more about that.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening. As you see in the packet, we've obtained a proposal from Liz Allen Fay, who's worked with the city before, to help us align all the entities in our community as best as she can, with a focus on a strategic housing plan that has some metrics that we can measure accomplishments, but also some actions. And as you remember, several years ago, we completed a housing needs assessment, and we've had a lot of entities interested in furthering housing alternatives and diversity in the community. But we believe that the time is now to get everybody together to understand their respective roles, and then how we can move forward with making a meaningful difference in the community. And we believe that this proposal over the remainder of the year, with somebody that's well-versed in bringing people together, we can create that plan, and it'll also include engagement from you. This is a very complicated quality of life issue for our community, as you know, and we want to try to align everybody towards the same focus and goals going forward.
So we're not asking Ms. Fay to be Alan Fay to be a housing expert. We're asking her to facilitate some of the expertise and capability that already exists in the community and look at how that gets aligned with initiatives going forward. And so we wanted to make you aware of that and start to advance that. We have some funding in both this year's budget and next year's budget to help with attainable housing initiatives and pilot programs, and we would pull those dollars from that source to support it.
Similar thing we went through with the strategic plan for the city. We have one public comment. Mort Stein, 2 minutes or less.
I can do it. Let me first of all, let me make myself perfectly clear. I do not represent any group or board or organization. These are purely my comments. What's that?
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do some sign
Okay,
language
I'm
for
sorry.
somebody else.
We won't take those 10 seconds.
Threw me off. These are purely my observations and comments and should not reflect on any board or organization that I am a member of. I look at this proposal and only see repeating what has occurred for the past 20 years or so. I do not believe that the final document will reveal or propose anything different than what has been done before, what has been proposed before, and what has been found before. Of all the plans and surveys and everything else we've done, I've looked at all of them, and they haven't changed in 20 or 30 years. And I know Vernon gets really mad at me when I quote Albert Einstein, but I'm going to do it anyway. And he said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Okay? That is the definition, and that's exactly what you're doing. Most of the information, opinions, feedback, etc., that this report will reveal is already available, and the city does not need to spend $24,500 to find that out. The city needs to develop a housing plan using the data and information already available, and the board and BOMA and the Planning Commission need to build consensus for implementing that plan.
I think that's what
Enough
that does.
studies have been done. We don't need any more. What we need is action. Okay? Thank you.
Scott Black wants to
We're
talk
doing
about.
exactly what you just described.
Action.
Your last statement is exactly what this does.
It does.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
let's-
actually does.
Well, I look,
It takes what
I've got
exists
the
and
next
it
speaker coming up.
focuses it.
show me where it says that it's going to take.
Read it.
You're out of order,
I've read it
Mr.
2 or 3
Stein.
times.
You're out of order.
Okay. He was out of order.
He works here.
Mr. Stein, I think that's worth an apology, so,
Okay. That's right. Yep.
Scott Black, item 12.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to all of you for your time this evening and your dedication to the city. I've written my notes down, so I apologize if I don't look everybody in the eye during this. I know you've heard time and time again providing affordable housing is the right thing to do. It's what we should do. While I don't disagree with these ideas, I'm going to share with you a different perspective on providing affordable housing. Let me start by telling you my political beliefs are rooted in 2 fundamental principles. 1, fiscal conservatism, and 2, limited government. When it comes to affordable housing, I hear many ask, why should we direct tax dollars towards the living arrangement of others? I would like to highlight how we are already directing tax dollars towards the living arrangement of others through our extensive and somewhat exhaustive transportation network. No offense, Paul. Because of antiquated land use policies that were done 50 years ago, as we heard in the last presentation with, I know, some other items, we created a lifestyle where everyone had to drive from one thing to another. Now I know we cannot put that genie back in the bottle, but we can modify our future planning and growth policies to reduce that demand on transportation systems. And by the way, I heard great things from a few of you last week during Kelly's presentation about our future growth plans and consolidating our uses in lifestyle and locating things closer together where we can live, work, play, worship, and other activities. Just think about how much roadway we have built in the last 40 years that we are now burdened to maintain for who knows how long. So what does that have to do with affordable housing? Turn the page. If we had attainable housing options in our community, it could limit the number of commuters coming in from outside lying areas. Spring Hill, Coffee County. I mean, I go and get my services in Cool Springs, and they live in Manchester and Lewisburg, Nashville, etc. This would be a very complicated endeavor and require a great deal of upfront planning and infrastructure work, but we could do it and make it a success. But first, it starts with consensus building and education on folks, as Eric had just mentioned. On my political principle of limited government, there are many here on this board and staff who have been on the front line fighting for our rights as a city against the heavy thumb of our state legislators. House Bill 1632 this year was a great example of that. This was a shot directed at Metro Nashville, but we were the innocent victim of that explosive legislation. We need to continue our outreach to our state legislators and remind them that limited government means that the city should have the ability to govern their community and their budgets in the way that they see fit. So when it comes to affordable housing and land use policies, I ask that you be bold and think big about this great community and how it can be great in the future. 1, fight to overturn this legislation and return the power back to the city. And 2, empower the team that we have to develop a comprehensive land use plan that considers inclusionary zoning.
Amen.
Other comments or questions? Ready to move on? Alderman Blanton and then Alderman Speedy.
I was quite shocked by this, and I've had a few phone calls today. I don't know that I can support spending money on another expert that doesn't know anything about the subject. However, I understand the goal here is to bring those people who
Facilitating
are.
what we
I
have,
understand
yeah.
that. Y'all know me for speaking my mind, and I apologize. To me, this is a slap in the face of the Housing Commission. And I just don't understand. I think it to me, it looks like we're trying to do something else, but I don't know that it's got the right experts in to actually give us a tangible product. So that's just how I feel about it.
I guess I would say it's giving a tool to the Housing Commission. It's helping give them some direct facilitative support in
But they don't
helping bring both them and others in the
Okay.
community together to talk about how we can move forward.
And I don't want to argue,
Mm-hmm.
but I will say I've sat in a room with 4 of the housing organizations whose initiative is to do something, and they get along quite well, and they work together quite well, and they all have come together, seemingly to me, here in the most recent past to try to actually take advantage of an opportunity that's presented itself, which we will talk about here in a few minutes. So I don't know that I see this as necessary. I think the veterans that we have, and I mean not veterans of war, veterans of this initiative, work together well. And I think they just are lacking opportunities to actually execute.
Alderman Speedy.
I guess similar lines. I guess I'd almost like, again, as a new person, see the strategic plans from those 4 organizations, and maybe there's common themes already that we could just start implementing, I guess, before we spent the additional $24,000.
Alderman Berger.
Well, if they want to get together and talk more, I think they should facilitate it themselves. And I think they're very capable people to do that. I don't want to spend $24,000 to bring them together, which agree with Brandy. These people seem to get along really well. The groups get along. And I think there are people in this community that can facilitate it for capable people who can facilitate this, not for $24,000.
Alderman Bransford.
Well, we can talk about consultant, but it's us. We're the one guys that gonna make that decision. We're the one who's been talking about this for, I mean, we've been around for 10, 12 years on this board since the Housing Commission was in play. So the decision is right here with us. We do not need someone coming from outside to tell us. This board has to man up and make decisions when recommendations are brought to us by the commission that we appointed. Each one of those guys and gals that sit on the commission, we approved. And when they bring ideas and suggestions, they can make decisions. We do. We have to make that bold move and create those opportunities, those strategic movements, those action steps. We have to do that, the board. That's my
Mayor
2 cents.
Barnhill. One comment on the previous comment, and the term affordable was used. I've addressed that as workforce. There's 2 different things there, and that's what. I'm gonna be perfectly candid with you. That's what I'm looking at is workforce. Affordable housing to me is the Franklin Housing Authority. That's the way it works. Okay, you have another group here that is or 4 groups, excuse me, three that are 3 that have done this type of stuff, and 1 that is probably in some advisory capacity or something other. But we're looking at workforce housing. We're not looking at affordable housing. There is a difference, and you know, we listened the last 2 or 3 times to, I guess, Community Housing Partnership, Hard Bargain, Habitat for Humanities. We've listened to all of those make some type of presentation. There's an opportunity on a piece of property that we have for someone or a combination of those 3 groups to bring forth a plan that we approve. It's probably going to be a plan that's pretty well receptively approved, because I think most of us are looking at doing something that we've been talking about for the last 8 or 10 years, certainly not since 1968, but we've been talking about it for quite some time. So I'm ready to look at something from either Habitat or workforce housing, from Community Housing Partnership, or from Hard Bargain, either one, or some combination of those 3.
Mr. McGurk, and then
I
I'll
will.
go to Alderman.
All very good points, and the reason we wanted to bring it before you. And what I would share from where I sit and coming from a community when I started my career in public service that was deep into housing and community engagement, and looking at other communities that deal with this important issue. Several years ago, we hired Dr. Smith to create a strategic housing plan, and it brought us together. But the most important thing, at least in my opinion, that it did, it defined certain metrics in which we plan, in which it provides each of our departments focus on where they need to allocate their resources to serve our community. It's a strategic plan that you approved. It's on the internet. People, our community, our citizens can pull that up and look and see how we're doing. And actually, in a couple minutes, Eric's going to talk about that, and some of those metrics are right in our annual budget. And that's what we really fail with housing. Because, yes, we are going to talk about a property, the Hill property, in a little bit, that offers 25, 30 homes. The question I ask, is that enough? Is it detached, single-family homes that we're trying to create? Is it workforce, or is it affordable housing? And what are we really focusing our combined efforts? Because when I moved to this community almost 12 years ago, I found that this community has the talent and the resources to accomplish anything. And the engagement is at such that if we have a goal, that we'll achieve it. But I'm definitely haven't seen that we know where we're headed. Is it detached single-family homes, home ownership? Is it rental housing? Is it a combination? Is it looking for more tax credits to encourage private developers to provide equity into projects? All of these issues will address the needs that were identified. But where's our focus on achieving those? And in talking to the different entities, people that really have a passion for moving forward, in my opinion, it's not aligned. We don't even know what we're going after. It's this project today and maybe another one tomorrow, or this opportunity. So and we'll come back and we'll do more work and elaborate further. But I would urge you to think about, is there truly a common vision? Do you know where we're headed? If you do, then we don't need to do this and we can leave it to the groups. And I would agree with Mort in this case, which is rare, that it would be the same old, because they've been meeting all this time and they don't have that goal to shoot for that we're really good at in the city of Franklin. Thank you.
So the 24/5 is supposed to eliminate all the meetings and put all this stuff into one little neat package that'll come back before us, and the 8 of us can have a vision out of that then?
It will provide a central focus of where we all need to be aligned to work towards and how to get there. We know what the housing needs assessment plan says, but how are we all working to get there? Is it showing up at a board meeting when there's a few acres of land and say, let's put some houses on it? Should they be detached? Should they be affordable or workforce? You know, how are we going to approach that? And that's the piece that really lacks now, particularly through my eyes, because I've come from an area that's worked on housing. We have a lot of smart people here, and Alderman Blanton is correct. That's why we don't need an expert to tell us what to do. It's how to bring us together so we can give you the confidence that when an opportunity comes, that we can make that commitment. And it's not all on the city. We can't put all the money to it. It's a community-wide issue. I appreciate Mayor allowing me to elaborate, but I too am frustrated. Because when I came here, one of the first things we did is we became an entitlement community, and we've received $250,000, and now we're up to about 335. And we've put it to very good use. And you established a housing commission, and they work hard. They've gone through frustrations. But what have we achieved? And what are we supposed to achieve is the question that I leave you with this. I wasn't prepared to say what I said, so I'm really speaking from the heart, and I hope you respect my opinion. Thank you.
My question is just simply, from whence did this come? Was this driven by a request from stakeholders, or was this staff driven, or?
Combination of staff sitting down with some of the stakeholders and saying, what do we need to do? Can we help put some more focus on it?
Well, I think that all the players are known, all the positions that those players hold are known, and we need to do something. I see a timeline here that reaches out to December, at least. I'm prepared to take some steps with an identifiable project that is right here, right now. And I think this board needs to take action more than we need to have another round of conversation with the known players who will say the same thing. I do not think that anyone is going to change anyone's mind, no matter how skilled the facilitator. People's positions on this are, as far as I can tell, fairly hardened. My view of this is that we have the opportunity with a specific project to do a thing, and that thing can and should be a success story behind which the advocates will rally and say, we knew we could do it, and the disbelievers will be forced to come up with something new to say. And then we'll have direction, because we will have a success story. I don't want to talk about success anymore. I want to do it. So that's not to say that facilitating and all that is unimportant or if we were flopping around and we didn't have an agenda item that we could actually vote on and execute and say we're gonna take a leap, we're gonna go out front. You know, sometimes the thing for policymakers to do is to listen and then do what the majority of the people seem to want. But sometimes what policymakers need to do is lead. Lead people, even people who don't want to go where they're being led. And then either suffer the consequences of having done it, or try not to say, I told you so. I'm prepared to do the thing. And I don't really feel like I don't need to be at any more meetings to do it. I say we do the thing. And maybe then, afterwards, a facilitator might be more helpful. Once the shouting naysayers have been marginalized and the success attracts more talent and more momentum. Conversely, maybe the thing craters. We all lose our job, and the naysayers say, I told you so, and then it's someone else's problem. But one or the other's got to happen.
See, Verna, the statement you made, see, I don't see that it's necessarily the issue right now as to whether it's townhouses or whether it's single family. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is we have a piece of property. We have an opportunity for a project. And maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, let me clarify. This is not about the hill.
Right.
This is not
It is.
about,
It
you
isn't,
can't,
but it
this
is.
isn't saying, do this before you do the hill. Do both.
Yes, that's my.
We're not saying that
It's about the whole
you need to do
program.
this before you make a decision on the hill.
about
It's
the
just saying, what do you do after that? Or what's the broader strategy, and how do we align all of this?
Yeah.
Because we haven't done that yet. And so I just want to make it clear that we're not saying you got to complete this before you can make a decision.
No,
It's
we
just,
didn't-
this
we didn't
might
say
help
that.
us.
Didn't say that. What we've said is that we have a project now that we can look at. We don't necessarily, we have the consultant, facilitator, whatever it is, come in. But I don't think the facilitator is going to give us any direction on whether or not we do the Hill project or we don't. It's
Yeah.
not.
That's
Okay?
not what this is about.
That's not what yeah.
There will be those who say, wait for the results.
Yeah.
There will be those who say, there will be those who will camouflage their real message,
Yeah.
which is do nothing or do what I want you to do, who will say, wait till you get the results. Why would you make a decision before you have the results of this study?
Well, let
Even
me-
though that's not
yeah.
what we think.
And that's not what we're recommending. I just want to be clear on that.
I know,
Okay.
but the people who are dead set against anything other than what they want will use any opportunity to delay and frustrate, feeling like the longer they can delay and frustrate, that's winning. So I don't want any more excuses, any more things that people can point at and say, well, let's think about it or study it or wait for the results of this. Or if only that person would sign up or whatever. Look, a good plan executed ruthlessly and now beats a perfect plan executed sometime in the future. Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to be brief, but, I find maybe the problem here is like the organizations all have their things going on, but are they disjointed? So they need to be brought together to say, what is the plan? This is what I've felt all along has been happening out there. They do need to come together. I think there are other people that can bring you together and do that, not for $24,000. Let's do it. Talk to me afterwards. We'll do it for free. We'll find out. I spent years doing housing market analysis studies for the Navy and the Coast Guard all over the United States. And this is some of the decisions and discussions we've had. It was always about affordable housing for their base personnel because they could never put their base personnel all on the bases. They had to house them in the community. And everywhere I went, these places were very, very expensive. Key West, Florida, Chicago, Great Lakes Naval Training Center, you name it. They were always in the Coast Guard was always in resort areas. So they had a lot of problems there. So when I look at all these organizations, I see disjointed efforts, and they need to come together, and I think there's a way to do that and not spend $24,000. The other thing, I always think that in the all high-end communities, and we're a high-end community because it's expensive to live here, and we have all, we're an expensive community. But they all have this problem. We're not alone. We have this problem. But I think we look too much to government to solve the problems. Dana, you're ready to do something, but I'm not ready to do something and make government the entity that solves the problems, because we're out there in way too many areas doing things as a government, and I'm not just saying Franklin, I'm saying the government. You can take it from local to national, into everything, and that's what's happened. Our jurisdictions are all messed up, so we're doing all these things that we shouldn't be doing. So when we come back to Franklin, let's look and say, what is the jurisdiction of government? Get out of the darn way and let free enterprise happen. Get out of the way and try to, what can we do to get out of the way? And also, what can we do to be helpful, to be able to let these organizations do what they do best? So I would say we have to provide, the business environment. People come here because of our business environment, because they thrive. We have less regulation and low taxation. So those things, I think that all comes into play here with when we're talking about affordable workforce, attainable housing. And I think there's ways to do that. Scott Black, you and I have had many conversations on this, and I think that there are ways to do this, and we don't need to be the problem solvers here. You all and your groups have to be the problem solvers. This is a community that gives incredible amount of money to all these organizations. We save a theater. We do downtown programs. We have all types of charities. I can't fathom why we have not come together to make this kind of thing happen in our community, rallying our community around, to put together endowments that we can build on. We have very wealthy people giving endowments to build up endowments to put together these kinds of programs. So I have many more things I could say with this, but I think you get the picture.
Item 13, discussion on proposed changes to city's municipal code Title 18 water and sewer impact fees and irrigation fees.
So we're returning to this topic after doing a little more additional work on it, and want to walk through for you some both short-term, medium-term, and some longer-term adjustments around our impact fee for water and sewer, that structure, as well as policy direction from you regarding irrigation services, so and irrigation rate structures, et cetera. So Michelle Hatcher kind of walked through this presentation for you, and then we'll be glad to answer any questions, discuss, and there'll be further elements coming forward to you over the remainder of the year as we move forward. But we wanted to cover this from a broader perspective up front. So take it away, Michelle.
Okay. So working on it. Okay. The presentation. It's the top one, yeah. So we'll, as Vicky's loading that, we'll go through the kind of three main things that Eric talked about that we're going to discuss. So kind of the short-term action, what we're looking for guidance on tonight is some proposed modifications that we have to the water and sewer impact fees. The structure. The second one that we're going to be bringing back to you later on this year, probably later on this summer, is the second slide. Oh, do I have this? Oh, shoot.
I don't think she has control.
This is perfect. This is where we are now. Okay. So later on this summer, a discussion about kind of how we're going to potential modifications to those fees, and that'll come in a couple months. And then the third discussion, which we're looking for guidance for tonight as well, is the irrigation impact fee and some of the modifications that have been proposed to that as well. So we'll go. So the next slide talks about, it just gives really the definitions of what the fees are right now. So the system development fee is what we collect, is one of the fees that allows us to replace, to do maintenance on the water distribution and the collection system. The access fee is what we typically do for capacity, so it's for capacity related projects. So that would usually be both either of the plants, the water plant or the wastewater plant. So what we're proposing to do tonight is just to simply combine those fees and to call them an impact fee. So we're not changing any of the monetary amounts, just to make, we'll talk about a little bit later, to make the record keeping of that a little bit easier.
Just those two fees?
Just those two fees.
To be called the impact.
To be called the impact fee. So we also have another fee that's on wastewater, the effluent disposal assessment fee, and that's going to remain separate. So that's really targeted more toward reclaim growth in the system. And as we're taking a look at that in some of the more kind of vital areas of our system, we're going to keep that as its own separate fee for now. Okay, so the next slide. So our existing impact fee structure It's complicated in terms of accounting and the application of it. The distinction between the two categories within each utility is unnecessary. So if we have a project that is the way that it's structured right now is that we've got to determine what the existing capacity and need is versus what's going to be related to growth. And so those calculations are sometimes difficult to. Oh. Go ahead. Yeah.
We, Michael and I are here from the accounting perspective, and as we actually implement the way these fees are structured, we actually have to keep 4 separate buckets of monies. We have water system development fees, water access fees, then the same on the wastewater side. And so certainly those are accounted for as they are currently in the ordinance. But what happens in practicality is every single capital project then has to be identified as one of those 4 types of projects. And certainly we, in this proposal, are going to recommend continuing keeping a water impact fee and a wastewater impact fee. So we'll go from 4 categories to 2 categories for the accounting of these revenues. But in essence, then we'll be identifying projects into one of those 2 categories. So we'll head into water capital projects and wastewater capital projects. And simply in the way we look at that perspective is that we're a system that while we do talk about growth and the capital needs in the water and sewer system related to growth, we certainly have water mains that are 70-plus-year-old water mains. We have very old collection system pipes in the ground. So it really does restrict the engineers to be able to assess the capital projects and their needs when there's buckets of money that are only tied to what's considered new expansion. Well, they're also assessing what needs to be fixed, whether it be a 70-year-old water main, which is just as important to the system. So this would allow for more flexibility for the engineers to identify funding sources for those capital projects that are all very important.
So one of the things that also the current structure is not nimble enough to respond to evolving priorities. So a good example of that is the 54-inch pipe this past year. And then it also limits our ability to use available funds based on a snapshot in time of capital projects. So it's, as our priorities change, as we identify different needs that are in the system, and so allowing us to have this flexibility to use those different monies is beneficial. Okay, so the next slide is the proposed structure that we're wanting to do is to consolidate both the water and wastewater system development and access fees into just the water impact fee. So as Christine was saying, we're moving from 4 fees to 2, so still keeping the water and wastewater separate. The proposed changes continue to restrict the use of impact fees for capital needs of the system while allowing the flexibility as capital priorities are identified. And then with your guidance tonight, we'll come back in the next meeting with an ordinance to approve for that.
And that would be an ordinance under consideration for 2 meetings because we're not actually adding to fees. It would not be 3 readings, which is a typical ordinance to increase fees. It would be two readings to be effective for the end of the fiscal year so that we could incorporate this into our audit process.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Generally, these have been what we consider impact fees. Mm-hmm. That is the impact of growth. Is there any restriction on that, the way there is on impact fees for some of the things that don't have to do with water and sewer? Because I know on those, they have to fit into certain categories. And if you're talking about an impact fee that's required for growth, I don't see how you can spend that for replacement.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. It's going to still be growth related. We're getting rid of the distinction between collection and distribution systems and plant capacity. And we're really saying it's really, impact fees by definition are related to growth. And they would need to maintain
so
that.
You cannot really use those to replace
unless you're upsizing.
That's right. Well, we need to talk about this some more. I mean, it's deeper than I realize.
Yeah. Well, you have really an unnecessary distinction between the access and the system development fee, and we're saying those really all can work together as one kind of growth-driven fee.
But in that case, it still wouldn't do anything for old systems. Is that right?
Well, most of the times.
That's the nature of impact fees.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. So I thought
when
we
we
were
do
talking
replace a
about.
line, it's because of additional capacity is needed on that line or upgraded infrastructure to serve growth. So properties that have been subdivided into multiple parcels or new construction that's going to have,
Sure.
that's going to benefit from
But it's not just to
a better
replace a
main.
75-year-old line, period.
That's accurate.
Okay, so we'll go back. So the next slide is kind of just a summary of the title of the revisions that we did. So this is I uploaded the track changes document into the Granicus file because I figured that would be easier to see what's all been changed. So we did several editorial changes, capitalizing some things. We clarified some language about meters. It doesn't read. It actually read incorrectly in the municipal code, the existing municipal code. So we clarified that. We defined, and so we added the impact fee to just replace the system development and access fee, and then we modified the Appendix A, which talks about which is the summary of all of those costs as well. So I'm not going to go through all those because I think you can probably look through all those. The next slide is the Chapter 2 revisions, which is the wastewater section. So that's pretty much just the same thing as well, modifying the system development and access fee language, and then modifying the Appendix A, which lists all those fees.
Okay.
So I guess this is where we wanted to pause and kind of get, I know Alderman Peterson, you provided feedback, but to get the guidance on the first, the modification of that language from system development and access fees to just a single impact fee.
Everybody okay with combining those?
Impact fees and
So why were they
irrigation.
originally separated? Because that happened before I.
It's not rooted in state law. It was just a choice that was made at the time to draw a distinction, and that's why we're saying it's unnecessary. And they're all growth related. They're all growth related costs. I mean, honestly.
We were probably told it was legally defensible.
Yeah, maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
the theory behind the distinction is that one aspect is that the fee is for buying into the system because capital improvements were made to the system, and that the person or the entity that's buying in, that there has been cost incurred to get to that point. The other part of that distinction is that there's going to be future capital needs related to growth. So that's kind of where the theory of, at one time, there were two separate
But they're
buckets of money.
both related to growth.
But one is
And
kind
what
of,
growth pays
one
its way.
aspect is buying into the system. The other aspect is that there will be future growth needs because of additions that are coming on. So that's where this is very, very challenging, the current accounting structure, because for the bucket of money that is related to buying into previous improvements, capital improvements to the system, that is where, when you have these significant needs such as water mains, collection system improvements, that those are related to costs that have already been incurred. But certainly these are capital assets of the system that need to be maintained. But they are capital additions to the system when they are prioritized at the high level.
Two things I think of, and I hate to spend a lot of time on this, but this is pretty
This is
complicated.
a whole lot of meat, and we still aren't even halfway
Exactly.
through the slides.
Exactly.
So I'm going to suggest we just continue on through this and bring it back in another time. So if
Okay,
you
well,
could
I've
just speed on through your
Just ask one thing,
presentation
'cause
for us to.
it's gonna be-
I'm sorry?
Oh, sorry.
What'd you say?
I just wanted to ask one question that would separate these.
Well, let me finish
Okay,
speaking,
sure,
and then I'll,
sure.
as far as what I want to do, if it's okay with everybody, is
Sure,
to let her go on through the
Yeah.
presentation. And then if you have a question, you may ask your question, certainly. But I think there's so much here that we're
Yeah,
not going
I agree.
to reach full comprehension on this tonight.
Absolutely.
It's just
Okay.
way too much.
Okay.
It's a lot.
So we'll go through the next section fairly quickly because this is the section that will be brought back to you later this summer. So the way that we structure the impact fees right now is that we base them off of water meter size. So there is not so there's an incentive for the developer or for new development coming in to get a smaller meter size because they'll be paying smaller fees. That's a little bit it limits the equitable distribution of fees, especially related to the sewer side of things, because we charge everything off of that meter size. When you have a smaller meter and you have a larger development that's trying to put more flow through a smaller meter, it can affect the flow. And so the table that we have here on this, it shows the percentage increase from going from one meter size to the other. So you can see that going from a 3/4 inch meter to a 1 inch meter is a 300% cost increase. So naturally, you'd want to stay with the smaller meter if you can. This type of structure also discourages the use of fire suppression systems, and it's unnecessarily complicated as well. So this next slide, and we won't spend too much time on this. So this is just the summary of fees that we have right now. And you can see that there's a large, as you go down the total column, the large fee for the different meter sizes. That's a pretty significant cost increase, and so, pretty relevant that you'd want to stay with the smaller meter. So the next slide talks about what we're going to propose to you later this summer. So we're going to propose a new unit of measurement called the single-family unit equivalent, and that's defined as 350 gallons per day. That's a pretty standard unit of measurement in the industry. And what we'll have for that is that so multiple family homes will be a fraction of SFUE, and then non-residential or commercial restaurants will be a multiple of an SFUE. And so what that'll do is that will discourage the use of trying to downsize meters, which will give a little bit more equitable cost to the water and the sewer fees that we collect. It'll encourage the use of fire suppression systems, which is always a benefit. So the next slide is just really, this is what we would like for it to go for. It's just a simple sanitary sewer impact fee or SFUE fee and a water SFUE. So those amounts are still to be determined. That's what we'll come back to later this summer. And so the last part of the discussion is what we wanted to talk about was the irrigation impact fee that we currently have. So right now, we allow the customer to purchase a separate irrigation fee that uses potable water. So this is not reclaimed water, this is potable water. So as we were saying, we bill the sewer charges off of the water usage. But if they purchase a separate irrigation meter, there's an impact fee to purchase an irrigation meter, but sewer charges are not charged to that. So right now we have an inclining rate structure, which means that the more usage that you have, the more that you would pay, identifying that you use some of that for irrigation. But then for sewer, we have a declining rate structure, which identifies those increased water consumptions as probably for irrigation. So you can see the table right there. Those are the sizes, those are the irrigation meters charges that we would charge for just that meter.
Wow. Crazy.
So when we came to the board last fall, I think it was, Mark did, and you had kind of guided him to look at a winter pricing model and then a reduction in the fees. And so we wanted to kind of provide some results to that. So looking at the winter pricing model, doing some rough calculations would look at a wastewater, so the impact to the wastewater revenue would be between $2 and $3 per customer per month. And that was based on an evaluation of inside the city customers in 2016. So it doesn't seem like a significant amount, but that would impact our wastewater fund. And the way that we have the structure, the winter pricing would encourage the increased use of potable water for irrigation. And so if we did that, we would then in turn need to reevaluate our potable water fee, so the water rates that we have for potable water, to make up for that lost revenue in wastewater. If that makes sense. So the other option that was asked was a reduction in the irrigation meter impact fee. And so that does improve the return on investment for customers. So the way that it's structured right now is that a complete tap installation is $756. But we typically, a typical installation is about $1,600, depending on where we have to run the line and set the meter. And our municipal code right now allows for full recovery of that cost. So the current irrigation impact fee would be about a little under $4,000 for a residential meter. But the current potable water impact fee is about is a little bit under $3,000. So you can see that price difference in there. So if we did go the route of the separate irrigation meter, we would be encouraging the increased use of potable water for irrigation, and we would probably have to set a separate rate structure for irrigation meters as well. So instead of the water, sewer, and irrigation as well, because there would be more irrigation meters in the system. So I know that was fast.
A lot of meat there. Let's just bring it back and
Yes.
have it again. I think it's,
That's the first of the meeting.
yeah, put it on the first.
I thought the water that the city's water, I thought it's finite because we only have, we only have a finite source of water, and so our city water system's not really growing any, is it?
Very little.
There's some growth in our area. Berry Farms includes the city water system.
Okay.
So that
And
growth
so-
is all
but that comes
encompassed
through
in city
Harpeth
water.
Valley?
But we produce about a third of our water and
Yeah.
purchase on a retail purchase from
Exactly.
Harpeth Valley Utility District, the remaining 2/3.
Okay.
So there is some expanding demand.
But we're going to bring this back to another
Yeah,
work
thank you.
session. We'll put it on
Okay.
early, and
Thank you.
this is a preliminary. So let's go to 14. Which
14,
is-
15, 16, and 17 are all about the budget. They're on
All
for
right.
first reading tonight. I can talk about it then if you'd like.
Yeah.
How about that?
Sounds great. Okay, we'll move on to item 18, which is a resolution 2018-42 to be entitled a resolution to initiate a plan amendment to Envision Franklin for the city-owned property at 403 and 405 Fifth Avenue North, known as the Hill property.
So I think we got a preview on this earlier. So this really is to touch on, we've drafted a resolution with some options about how we move forward from the concepts that were shared with you previously. And would like to have Emily and Vernon maybe walk through the process that we envision happening, because you've got land use, you've also got other issues down the line that you'll need to work with depending on the board's direction. So I'll let maybe Emily walk through that with you.
So just as a recap to last time, I'll keep this pretty brief. This isn't necessarily about the example designs that were presented. This is about the land uses that would be permitted in Envision Franklin. And this resolution was drafted to allow you to choose which of the design concepts, which is how we kind of label uses in Envision Franklin, you would prefer that staff move forward with to the Planning Commission for that amendment. So there were 3 different options that we've studied thus far. One, keeping it recreation, which would allow civic institutional uses. Changing from recreation to a compact residential design concept, which would allow single-family residential in a form similar to what you'd see in Hard Bargain neighborhood. Or thirdly, doing a design concept for mixed residential, which would allow townhomes, big houses, which would allow 4 units inside of one building, any of those uses, and a combination of single family, or any of those as standalone. But it gives the most flexibility. That would also get you the most units on the property as well. So we've drafted the resolution to allow you to pick one of those 3 options. Again, really focusing on the use. The example designs that were created were merely examples of what could be done under each design concept. It doesn't have to the plan does not have to be one of those exactly by any means. There is flexibility within every design concept.
I say hear from the people.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I don't know how many I have. I have a whole stack. John Besser, I think we'll start out with about 1 minute each. I apologize, but that's what it's going to be. So, Star Bedoin is going to be next, followed by Brant Bousquet, so be prepared. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm here representing the Housing Commission, as are most of our commissioners this night. We want to support changing the envisioned Franklin plan for residential, for the mixed residential option. We see this piece of property as being centrally located. It gives us an opportunity to provide that workforce housing, that attainable housing for all the people we've talked about, city employees, service workers, recent graduates, people. It's walkable. It's just a great use for that property long-term. People investing in the community can stay in the community as their families grow and get forward. So we support the changing, modifying the envision plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce Starr.
First of all, thank you for your dedicated service to this community. That's very fine. I have a quote that means a lot to me by Everett Edward Hale. I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do. The Hill is one of the can-dos, a perfect opportunity for truly affordable workforce housing. As far as the surveys are concerned, the neighborhood meetings should take priority. Those interested in what happens on the Hill property took the time to come, review the possibilities, and ask questions. At the last meeting, no one really knew who received the online surveys. Many in this community feel we need affordable housing more than we need a park. In conclusion, to thrive, our community needs services. To serve, people need a house. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bousquet, and followed by Francis Patton.
First off, I'd like to say that the three nonprofits, Hard Bargain Association, Community Housing Partnership, and Habitat for Humanity have been working on this for 2 years, and we are unified, and we do have a common vision, and we know what we want to do. Franklin Housing Authority has come in as a fourth partner, and then later Franktown has expressed interest, and I will stay focused just on the Hill right now. A question that was not addressed last time at our meeting was the concern that in the case of a flood, that everyone would be trapped, and that is not true. We have garnered an arrangement with the Mount Hope Cemetery Association. Their board has voted on it. There's an easement. They are happy to for emergency only, and so that is addressed. And then lastly is just the urgency that land and home prices are only going up. They are not going to go any cheaper, and as more people move here, it's just going to get more and more out of control. So the time is now.
I'm Miss Patty Williams, in need of affordable homes here in Williamson County. And Mrs. J.W. Cross spoke at the meeting here saying, we voted you all in, you all should consider them on your package.
Stephen Murray.
I'm going to speak from here too. About 2.5 years ago, the city administrator and the mayor graciously listened to my board chair and one of my board members put forth an idea to possibly put housing on the Hill. I have spoken with most of you all. I appreciate you listening to what we've had to say, and we ask for your consideration on this issue.
Mr. Crutcher. And next will be DeMontre Grigsby. So if you'll be standing in the ready in addition to Tevin Smith.
Okay. I'm Ronald Crutcher. I live at 1324 Adams Street, and I've lived
in Williamson County all my life and in Franklin since 1969. Tonight, I'm here to speak on this resolution and urge you to adopt option B, which is on the resolution, which is the mixed housing, and amend the resolution to eliminate the other two, which is recreational and other housing. Franklin is evolved into a community that has a desperate need for housing for the people that work here. Yesterday, I had a garage door mechanic and a plumber at my house. The garage door mechanic lives in Spring Hill. The mechanic's apprentice lives in Clarksville. During the last day, at my last day at the Williamson County Medical Center, my wife and I made a point to ask the nurses and staff where they lived. Shelbyville, Columbia, Murfreesboro, Dixon, etc. After working 12 hours shift, they don't need to have to drive an hour and a half to get home. There seems to be a renewed support for lower cost housing. This project could be a continuation of the efforts that had been made on West Main Street condominiums. Let's
You'll finish
don't
up, please.
forfeit this chance to make a difference in housing. I commend BOMA and the mayor on how they are moving forward in an organized and fair way. Thank you all for the time you spend on the city business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Grigsby? And Tevin Smith will be up next.
Franktown Open Heart has been very impactful to my life since I was in middle school. Franktown Open Hearts has directly impacted my life through Bible study and tutoring at an early age. Having Franktown Open Hearts in my life showed me that I can do anything that I put my mind to. However, I did just that by living in a low-income house throughout my life. I made it through high school and 2 years of ITT Tech and obtained my associate's degree in drafting and design. Without Franktown Open Hearts, I probably wouldn't have the tools to be successful now in my life. So giving this building to Franktown Open Hearts will definitely impact many low-income lives in the future.
Thank you.
Tevin, did you vanish?
First off, I'd like to
We'd prefer you to come up here, please. Next will be Timmy Wilson.
All right. Thank everybody for listening to me, to understand and not to respond. As I've seen, our board up here, their body language suggests they don't agree with everybody saying. So that's one unit, the board, So if you've got a leg that wants to go forward and a leg that wants to go backwards, you're just going to stand still. We all have to get on the same page and understand the median level I saw over there, which is real facts, unless y'all, don't have the real facts up there, is 500,000. I've been in Franklin my entire life. I've never been within walking distance of a house worth $500,000. I went from living in a place that was built in 1960 to a place that was built in 2010. That affordable housing has turned into more maintenance than it. I mean, we should just went and bought a little more expensive house. But this Franktown group is definitely changing lives in our community, and they have been for over a decade. I grew up in these inner city affordable housing options that we have now, and there's plenty of people that are my age that have been killed due to violence, of overdose, due to drug uses and stuff. And I just think that we should give somebody that's already making an impact in our community a bigger opportunity to make a bigger impact. If you ride down any road in Franklin, you're going to see a neighborhood getting built, just about any road. None of these are affordable housing. Homes from the 300s, homes from the 500s. I think we should just help our inner city. I mean, we're bringing in people that already have money and are already established. That's fine. That brings money to our economy. Well, let's put some of that money back into the economy and the community. And that's all I have to say on that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good comment. Thank you.
Following Mr. Wilson will be Mr. Campbell, Lillian Stewart, and Jeff Walker.
Hey, how y'all doing? My name is Timmy Wilson. I've been a part of Franktown for 16 years. One of the first kids to come through it. I'll just tell y'all a little bit how they impacted me. I had two options. Both of my parents passed away before I was 15. I was invited into drugs. I was invited into gangs. I knew about it. I was encouraged. I met Wayne Howe at 10 years old. I had a decision to make when all that happened, and I decided to follow Franktown. I'm 26 years old now. I'm married. I bought a house last October. And I know I sound passionate because I love that group. They saved my life. So the idea that y'all hold the power in y'all hands to impact so many more lives, and it's not about what will be done, it's about what has been done. And without Franktown, I would have never had this option. And I would have just been stuck in gang and violence. And the fact that y'all have the power to do that, just imagine what they can do with the building, and look at what they've already done without a building. And that's all I got to say.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I heard Mr. Campbell, that was my dad.
J. Edward.
J. Edward
Excuse
Campbell.
me.
J. Edward Campbell, 1809 Turning Well Lane here in Franklin, Tennessee. Again, I sit here again tonight as a citizen. I've held different positions, and I've been chairman of the Housing Commission, but I'm finishing Police Academy tomorrow night. And I want you to know I left Police Academy the other night in tears because I heard officers who live in Smyrna, and they live other places than here, and they didn't tell me this, so don't go back and tell the force because I'm saying for myself, I thought to myself, by God, they can serve my city, but by God, they can't live here. And that broke my heart to think that. When you see a police car at Publix or at Walmart or wherever in this city, that's a policeman that does not live here in this county. They can't take those cars home. They can only take those cars home if they live in Williamson County. If they live in Smyrna or wherever, they can't take their car home. I ask you to consider option B for mixed housing. Is it a cure? No, it's not a cure. Will it solve everything? No, it won't. But tonight, when we talked about what do we want to do and what are we afraid of when we say workforce housing? Thank you.
Jeff Walker.
Lillian Stewart. Well, Jeff, you're going to go ahead.
Yeah.
Because we're going to let Lillian have a minute to get here.
Okay. Did I cut line?
Go ahead.
No,
So I'm coming from a unique point of view. I too am a local resident of Franklin, grew up here, former firefighter for the city of Franklin, and I couldn't afford to live in Franklin. So publicly, thank you, Steve, for giving me a shot with Community Housing Partnership and getting my family back in Franklin.
Wow.
So I'm not on the board for either. I'm a volunteer for Franktown Open Hearts. I grew up 1,000 yards away from their family, didn't know it existed. So there's two organizations that hold a huge part of my life. And, seeing Timmy and, all these guys grow up, it's amazing to be able to give them an opportunity to have a place to go and grow their skills, grow their life skills. And heck, maybe even the neighborhood that ends up there has kids that we can help as well. So I'd ask you to thoughtfully consider a mixed use with Franktown and affordable housing in that area. Thank you.
Lillian Stewart, former mayor of Franklin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alderman, for the incredible work that you do and will continue to do for the benefit of all of our citizens. I'm here to speak in favor of the resolution to initiate a plan amendment to Vision Franklin for the city-owned property on Fifth Avenue North, known as the Hill property. I understand that is a first step before which any future discussion can really come to fruition. But I'm also here to speak in support of the nonprofit organizations requesting to construct long-term affordable housing at that site. With a lack of affordable homeownership having reached critical proportions in our city and county, an offer such as this seems to be an unparalleled opportunity for our community to mitigate, if not cure, the hardships of displacement and the inability of families to find moderately priced housing near to work and other needed services. Two particular advantages of the Hill proposal are that the surrounding neighborhoods are welcoming, not protesting the additional housing, and that the nonprofit organizations who would be responsible for the undertaking are highly qualified to provide a product that both planning officials and all Franklin residents can be proud of. Of course, due to the high cost of land today, this will not be possible without the willingness of the mayor and aldermen to make available the property in question by some means at the city's disposal. In Franklin's first comprehensive land use planning days,
You'll go ahead and start winding up, please.
yes, sir, we learned that when growth and prosperity arrive, all economic groups should expect to benefit. Much has been accomplished since then. It's now apparent that the time has come to address the looming problem of unaffordability for the less affluent who make our community livable and who make it thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? You ready? Alderman McClendon.
I'll be succinct. I'm planning to support affordable housing, but only on the condition that a home for organizations like, but including Franktown Open Hearts is included. That's a non-negotiable condition for my vote.
Question?
Alderman Bransford, and then
I'm going to yield my comment to recognize all the Franktown students that's in the audience tonight. Would you please stand? Franktown students. We heard a couple of testimonies. Let's give them a hand. These young people are changing their lives for the better, so we should really embrace that. Thank you all so much for coming out. I give my time back.
Alderman Berger.
Dana, Alderman McClendon, what did you mean by home for? Do you mean a building or
Yeah,
a facility?
Yeah,
that we would-
a
would
facility
build?
into which an organization like Franktown Open Hearts can do what it does, as well as a scout troop or whatever. Kind of a community center, if you will, that would serve not just the Hill community, the new houses or new homes that would be on the Hill, but the neighborhood as well. I mean, I don't know the answer to this. I'm ashamed to.
Option B or no?
We'd have to.
Option B, mixed residential does allow civic institutional uses as secondary uses at certain intersections, which this would be one of those intersections. We would probably, just to clarify, add a special consideration to make sure that's very clear in Envision Franklin, but we can update the resolution to include that as one of the options.
So my question is, when we get to this vote, is there, what is that, how many homes would that eliminate? Because we don't have any idea how large that would be, and then we don't know how many homes we're talking about at all. So if we vote for option B for mixed use, which would allow what Alderman Clendon's asking for, then it sort of puts me at a loss to say, even though I like that idea, then what does that eliminate as far as housing, and where do we start again?
You're going to get those specifics later on in your process, assuming you move forward with what you talked about. That's part of the types of proposals you will get, the vision of how many homes, types of homes, what other facilities might be in there to serve that neighborhood and others.
We originally were told so many houses, but if that happens, then it sort of eliminates some houses, but it still allows us the mixed use, which I will support.
Well, tonight, we're primarily considering
Right.
a land use plan that allows housing, and then all those other things
Right.
you've talking about, the numbers and things will come later.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you at 7:30.